Hello, I'm a housewife in my 40s. My first child had just entered elementary school. I used to have a job, but I quit when my child entered school. I had to quit because my daughter came home early from school, but I'm not complaining because I got to spend more time with her. I pick her up after school and walk around the neighborhood with her. To be honest, it wasn't easy to quit my job. Once I took a break from work, it wasn't easy to get back on track, But I didn't want to send my daughter to daycare. She's too young and needs her mother. I decided that it would be better to spend time with my child and save money instead of working while being anxious about her all the time. The first day as a domestic housewife was just like any other day. I've been working as a professional for 10 years, so waking up early was easy for me. I woke my daughter up, made her breakfast, and prepared for school. It was pretty much the same as my daily routine, so it was easy peasy. But the moment my daughter walked to the school gate, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. It was something I never paid attention to, because I usually had to leave in a hurry to go to work. It was the mothers rushing in, holding their children's hands. To be exact, it was how the mothers looked when they were waving their hands to their children, going to school. They were all in a rush, and looked like they were at war in the morning, preparing their children for school. They must have no time to take care of themselves because they needed to take care of their children. It was heartwarming. Actually, I'm an orphan. My parents abandoned me at an orphanage when I was 7 years old. It would have been better if they had left me when I was a baby, so I can't remember a thing. But unfortunately I do. The day they abandoned me at the orphanage, my mom told me, "They will let you go to school here. I will come back once I earn enough money, so be a good girl, okay?" I ran after my mom, crying that I didn't want to go to school, but she didn't even look back and left in a black car. I couldn't do anything but watch her leave me. I'm 40 now, but even now I feel uneasy and sad all day long when I think of that day. I'm much happier now than I was back then, but inside my heart I still have the lonely 7-year-old child who was abandoned by her parents. I didn't adjust well in the orphanage. The kids who lived there left me out, but I kept telling myself that my mom would come to get me soon, so it didn't matter. The president of the orphanage always felt sorry for me. She felt bad that I still missed my mom. But whenever I noticed that, I wasn't happy because I didn't need pity from anybody. I've been a troublemaker throughout my elementary school years. Time passed, and the graduation day came. I had hoped that my mom would finally come to get me at the graduation ceremony. I still remember that day clearly. My mom didn't come to the ceremony. No one did. I had to return to the orphanage without a flower like all my friends were holding. After that day, I became a so-called juvenile delinquent as soon as I entered middle school. Since there were no parents who would be heartbroken anyway, it seemed okay to live a reckless life. The president of the orphanage and the homeroom teacher scolded me and tried hard to soothe me, but at that time I didn't let anyone into my heart, because all the adults looked like my mother who had abandoned me. The people I hated the most were the volunteers visiting the orphanage. I was too twisted to see their good deeds then. To me, they were all hypocrites who wanted to reassure themselves that their lives were much happier than ours. So whenever they visited, I caused more trouble. If volunteers brought their kids to the center, I ran into them like a beast and bullied them on purpose. For that, I had to write more letters of apology than I wrote in my diary at night. I blamed my mom every night before going to bed. I thought I was the most unhappy child in the world. Then one day, a young lady showed interest in me even though I caused so much trouble. I didn't appreciate her interest, so I did everything possible to lose her interest, like cursing and showing bad behavior. But she still wanted to adopt me. The president was so happy and even shed tears of joy, calling it a miracle. But I suspected that there would be something fishy in adopting a grown child like me. Besides, her husband didn't like me. That made me more suspicious of the lady trying to adopt me. However, on the other hand, I thought it wouldn't be so bad to be adopted as my life couldn't be changed so much. And I was getting sick of living with so many people in a single room, so I thought anything would be better than this. I had to go back and forth between her house and the center until the adoption was legally confirmed. I still remember the day vividly. It was the day I went into a house, not the orphanage. It was like the warmth of eating rice in a bowl, not a cafeteria plate made of steel. She gave me a room with a bed and a desk that I wanted so much. And she also bought me pajamas. It was my first time wearing pajamas. Honestly, I loved it. I loved the fact that I have my own room now, even more than the fact that I was actually adopted. After that day, I made a decision not to lose this chance, and I became a completely different person. I started to play a role and fulfill their wish of being praised for being a good person by playing along. In order to do that, I had to act pitiful and nice. If that could give me a nice life like other kids, I was willing to do it all day. The play was a great success. She thought I had become a nice child because of her love and care. And she constantly pitied me and tried to provide me with everything, even before I asked. However, the play didn't last very long. A person can't change in a day. I may have tempted fate. I started a fight at school and my true self was revealed to my adoptive parents. I was worried they would give up the adoption. But whatever, I'll just go back to the center and do whatever I want. The adoptive parents were called to the principal's office and I was ready to face the consequences. But then something unbelievable happened in front of me. "Mr. Principal, this is nonsense. Do you know how nice our kid is?" A sight, I can assure you she was not the instigator. I had been uneasy all along because it seemed like the teachers were discriminating against my kid just because she's from an orphanage. How on earth do you manage your children? How can this unfair incident happen at a school? The adoptive mom yelled at the principal and the homeroom teacher, defending me, and Dad tried to calm her down, but it didn't work. She was doing everything to protect me. It came as a fresh shock to me. For the first time I had someone on my side. That night, my mom cooked me beefsteak and told me not to worry about anything because everything was okay. I felt a little uncomfortable because I felt guilty. So I kneeled in front of them and begged for forgiveness. "I'm sorry, I wasn't swept away. I'm actually the one who started the fight. I acted like a nice girl because I wanted to live here. I'm not a good kid as you saw today. I'm sorry I lied to you. Even though you were so nice to me, you can tell me to go back to the center. It's all my fault." Tears streamed down my face. I didn't intend to cry, but it just happened. I genuinely felt sorry, but I couldn't stop crying. But then I got up. I don't know if she knew, but I already knew. "So I didn't like you so much, to be honest. But now, seeing you like this, I feel that it's not too late. You've learned. That's all I need. We will not send you back to the center. That will not happen. I can promise you that. A parent-child relationship is meant to be. Even though we don't have a blood bond, we're meant to be. Call us Mom and Dad now. I mean, I can't force you, but..." Although his voice was blunt, it was very warm. After that day, we really became a family, little by little. And another surprising change is that Dad, who used to be so blunt at first, became a daughter's daddy. Since freshman year, I've come to my senses and began to study for the first time. Studying was actually fun, and the results were reflected in the report card. I was barely catching up with the class before, but my grades soared dramatically. The school suspected that I had cheated. My dad was angry with the suspicion and started a fight against the school. In the end, the school agreed to my dad's terms. I retook the tests in front of the teachers. If I proved my skills, I would be cleared of the charges, and my dad convinced the teachers to apologize to me. That evening, the adults apologized to me for the first time. Whether they meant it or not, I realized that this is why a child needs parental care. Also, I was so grateful to my dad for standing up for me. I went to a good high school to at least express my gratitude. I continued to study diligently. I wasn't lonely or tired because I had a mom who always cooked me a warm meal in the morning, and a dad who picked me up after school. My friends in high school didn't even know that I was an adoptee or how I was before. Then, when I became a sophomore in high school, I encountered one of the kids from the orphanage in the hallway. I hid in the restroom even though I didn't do anything wrong. She seemed like she also saw me and looked for me at school. I was afraid that my past would be revealed, But she seemed like she didn't care, and ended up telling my story to everyone who knew me. She pretended to be the beloved only daughter, even though she was an orphan. Isn't this shocking? A freshman who told us about Julie said she was a bully before she was adopted. You know, when she was in middle school. The school felt like hell because of the rumor. However, I couldn't tell my parents about this, and the way to school was like a way to hell. So I skipped school once or twice and studied diligently. At a library, the school called home about my absence, and I had no choice but to be honest with my parents about what happened at school. The next day, my parents went to school and dropped me out of school. The teachers tried to stop my parents, but it was useless. I can't leave my child with you. I can't trust you, my parents said. We will help our child study hard and support her until she enters the university she wishes to go to. Please sign us off now. Don't be like that. We will make sure to punish the student who spread the rumor, so please work with us. Mr. Principal, would you be able to send your child back to a place where rumors are rampant? I can't, my parents replied. I can't see my child being bullied by others. And that's how my high school year ended. Regret? None, not at all. After I quit school, my mom hired private tutors for me to study at home. I passed the high school degree qualification exam and prepared for the SAT, taking mock exams just like other students. As a result, I got into Harvard, one of the most prestigious universities in the world. The day I received the acceptance letter, my parents and I cried our eyes out. Their efforts and support were greater than mine, but my parents kept thanking me. I don't know how many times I said thank you to my parents, crying. After entering university, I set a goal to get a good job and return love to my parents. But as the saying goes, parents can't wait for their children to be good, just like time and tide wait for no man. One winter day in my junior year, my mom went on a road trip with her friends and got into an accident on the highway. My dad and I rushed to the hospital, hoping she would be safe, but she passed away. My dad, who loved her very much, collapsed, but I couldn't do anything to comfort him. He stayed awake, didn't eat, and was a broken man throughout the funeral. Seeing him like that, I wished I could have comforted him more, as if I were his own daughter. I was sorry that I couldn't do anything, even though he was going through such a hard time. I thought I couldn't ask my dad for more help when he had just lost the love of his life. So I told my dad that I would take a year off from school and live on my own. I thanked him for raising me and promised to never forget their good deeds and repay him for their kindness. Then my dad, listening to me without saying anything for a long time, cried loudly saying, "You are all I have left. Where do you think you're going, leaving me alone? Just go to school. Even if you're sad, just go to school. I can take care of you. I'm gonna walk you down the aisle. I'll pretend you never said what you just said." Since then, my dad has cried often. He cried because he missed Mom. He cried again because he was worried about the rest of the days he would spend alone. My dad, who used to be loud and blunt, became tender and sensitive. My dad and I did our best to fill in Mom's vacancy despite our poor cooking and housekeeping skills. After graduating from Harvard, I got a job at Google, where I had always wanted to go. When my dad heard the news, he cried again in joy, saying that Mom would also be proud of me. I now have no more wishes if you meet a good guy and have a family of your own. I said I'd live with my dad for the rest of my life, and I wasn't lying. I didn't intend to get married because I was worried about my dad being left alone, but I couldn't help falling in love. About 8 months later, after I got a job, I met someone who moved my heart. We just hung out together at first, but the relationship continued for over 3 years. And finally, my boyfriend proposed to me. When I hesitated to say yes with the concern about my dad, he cheered me on, saying he's finally done with his job and will just travel around from now on. Thanks to him, I accepted my boyfriend's proposal and met with his parents. Great to meet you. I've been so curious. His mom was a pretty kind and nice person. His dad was sweet and humorous. Even though it was our first encounter, we had a good time together. Both parents met each other and we began preparing for the wedding. I heard that others fight while preparing for marriage, but we didn't, and rather, everything went smoothly. One day, about a month before the wedding, something unexpected happened. My boyfriend said he had something to talk about, so I went out to meet him, and there was a middle-aged woman there. She said she's my biological mother. I couldn't believe it. Most of all, she didn't come to me first but contacted my boyfriend. My boyfriend already knew that I'm an adoptee, so that wasn't a problem. But I was somewhat embarrassed because she didn't come to find me for all these years but appeared like this. Do you know how much I cried when I heard you were adopted? I gave up when they told me you went to a nice family, but I couldn't stay still when I heard you were getting married. My mother's words didn't touch my heart at all. She didn't come when I waited for her for so long, but showed up when she heard I'm getting married. I couldn't accept anything she said. The only mom I have is the one in heaven. But I couldn't completely push my own mother away. I guess blood bonds do exist. I was gonna get you back once I'm settled, but it was never easy. I don't have a diploma, and it got even harder as I got older. I'm sorry, you've been waiting for me too long, haven't you? After listening to her story, I understood some parts. I was sorry to my dad, but I kept it a secret that I was meeting with my biological mother, and the wedding date was getting closer. My biological mom wanted to be introduced as my mom, but I told her that was not going to happen. But then, the bigger problem arose just 15 days before the wedding day. My soon-to-be mother-in-law met me and hesitated to say something for a while, but eventually, she told me she had met my biological mother. She said she was shocked that I'm an adoptee, but even more shocked that my biological mother asked for a house next to our home. I couldn't keep my head up with embarrassment and humiliation. I wanted to run away from the scene if I could. Honey, I didn't want to say this, but I have no choice. Let's call off the wedding. People say the route's not important, but I'm not confident that I would be able to pretend nothing happened. There could be times when you make mistakes, and I cannot guarantee that I won't mention that you couldn't learn anything because you're an orphan. And how do you know what your biological mother would ask of my son and us? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to your father too. Please do explain to him well. My boyfriend's mother woke up and walked away. I called my biological mother and asked her if what I had just heard was true. Oh my, did she tell you everything? I didn't ask for much. I just wanted to help you by your side. That's it. I wasn't trying to be a burden to you. She pretended to be so noble, but she had a big mouth. So did she say she'll break up the wedding? Tell her you don't need it. You can marry a better person. It was just ridiculous. When I hesitated to get married, my dad said he was all good as long as I loved my boyfriend. They were incomparable. This incident was a wake-up call for me. I must have been possessed by something. I won't allow you to interfere with my life. I don't care who you are. Don't contact me and don't show up ever again. If I ever need to be a good daughter, it would be to my parents who raised me all these years, not you. Who do you think you are? I couldn't get up for a while, even after hanging up the phone from shock. Meanwhile, my boyfriend and my dad called me, but I couldn't pick up the phone. My boyfriend texted me, saying his mom told him everything, but he will not break up the marriage, no matter what. But once I knew how my mother-in-law felt about me, I couldn't continue with the wedding preparations. When I went back home, my dad made me curry rice, the only dish he knew how to cook. Dad, why are you eating so late? Did you eat? You didn't tell me you would. Did you wait for me? Once you're married, I won't be able to eat with you. I'm gonna eat dinner with you until then. His words made me cry. He was confused and asked me what had happened. I told him about the situation with my mother-in-law and my biological mother. I added that since I won't be getting married, we will be able to eat together. I tried to smile, but he didn't. The next day, my dad took a day off from work and met with my mother-in-law without my knowledge. My boyfriend told me about my dad's meeting with her. I took a taxi and ran to stop him, but when I arrived and saw my dad, I couldn't do anything. I just froze. My dad was showing her a family certificate. I choked up when I saw my name legally registered as his daughter. He knelt in front of my mother-in-law for me and said, "Miss Rogers, Jessica is my daughter, my wife in heaven, and I raised her with love, with all our hearts. I know you liked her too. Although my daughter's biological mother was rude to you, I can promise that it will never happen again. Please, give our kids your blessings. You know how much they love each other, don't you? My mother-in-law was embarrassed and knelt too. Mr. Dillon, don't be like this. We're still confused and upset. My mother-in-law couldn't say anything when she saw my dad earnestly appealing. I apologized to my mother-in-law and took my dad out of the house. He cried in the taxi on the way back home, and I yelled at him, "Stop crying. Aren't you happy I live with you? Do you want to send me away?" I said things I didn't mean. Then he wiped his tears and said, "For me, no one is good enough for you, but I know you love him. If you didn't, I would stop you for sure. But you do, you love him. All the dads in the world would do the same for their daughters. I'm sure your mom would have done everything she could if she was here. Don't you remember how she acted when you were young?" I couldn't say anything in response to his words, but I cried my heart out. I guess I got my crying habits from my dad. After a few days, my mother-in-law called me, saying she was wrong. She apologized to my dad and me, and suggested we continue with the wedding as planned. Seeing my dad, I realized how prejudiced I was. "I'm really sorry. I've done something horrible to you even before the marriage. Please forgive me." My mother-in-law promised she would treat me like her own daughter and heal my heart hurt by her prejudices. I was able to have the wedding as planned. I also walked down the aisle holding my dad's hand, just like we had imagined. My biological mother attended the wedding despite my disapproval. I treated her like she didn't exist. Only later did I find out my dad invited her to my wedding. He invited her to the wedding so she wouldn't hold a grudge. She left me a letter saying she's sorry and that she wishes me a happy life. She never showed up in front of me after that day. Just like disasters take time to be recovered, her sudden appearance left me with scars and took me some time to recover. 3 years passed. My husband and I had a hard time having a child, so we decided to get tested. I was infertile. The world was testing me again, but we didn't give up. After 5 IVF treatments, we were blessed with my daughter. My dad was retired at that time and was living in a temple praying for our family. But he packed everything and came back home at once when he heard that I was pregnant. How can anyone say he's not my real dad? My mother-in-law often jokes, saying, "I can't nag you because I'm scared of what your father would do." But I still live with my dad's care and love. I miss my mom from time to time, especially when I see my daughter and other mothers, like today. But then I end up laughing when I think of my dad. Even though we're not connected by blood, it's not blood bonds that make us a family. I hope my father lives a long and healthy life so we can share more moments and love together. I'll also try to share the love I've received from my parents. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay healthy, and I wish all of you the best. Please leave your words of support and wise advice in the comment section. Likes and subscriptions help me a lot. Have a wonderful day, everyone.